This video introduces the M2 Baby class module. If you haven't already done so, do 1, which is to put your name there. In this module, you will implement and test a baby class. That class will model a baby being fed and time passing for that baby, during which time the baby will sleep, need to be fed, and cry if the baby is not fed. Together, we're going to read the specification for the baby class and then its test that we supplied. That will help you see what the methods of the baby class should do. After that, you're going to, on your own, implement and test the baby class. Once you've absorbed that, mark to do 2 as done and move on to do 3. The baby class has, as usual, a constructor method, that is, the __init___ method. That method takes self, the object being constructed, and a string for the name of the baby. The init method should print hello baby and then the baby's name and then an exclamation mark. For example, if we construct a baby sending it the string McKinley, it should print hello baby McKinley with an exclamation mark at the end. You'll also need to set some instance variables in this method, but hold off on that for now. So to repeat, what the init method does is it causes hello baby and then the baby's name and then an exclamation mark to be printed. Pause the video or replay the last little bit as needed until you understand what init does, and then we'll move on to the next method. Scroll down until you see the specification of the next method. It's called feedBaby and appears at about line 49. FeedBaby takes a single argument, self, that is the baby being fed. Like init, it prints something, but it prints thank you for feeding baby and then your baby's name, followed by a period. For example, consider the line of code b equal baby of Joshua. As we've seen, that causes init to run, which means that it prints, per the spec of init, hello baby Joshua, exclamation mark. If we now run the line of code b.feedBaby, that causes the method feedBaby to run operating on the baby named B, and per the specification, as shown in the green circle, that has the effect of printing, thank you for feeding baby, in this case Joshua. So to summarize, all that feedBaby does is, when it's operating on a baby, it prints, thank you for feeding baby, and then that baby's name. feedBaby also has to modify instance variables, but hold off on that for now. Pause the video and replay whatever you need until you understand what feedBaby does, and then scroll down to about line 63 where we see the specification of our final method, hourPasses. Like feedBaby, the hourPasses method takes a single argument, self, that is the baby for which an hour has passed. It also prints things, just like the previous methods did, but this time what it prints depends on what has happened previously. In particular, if this is the first time that this method has been called since the baby was created or last fed, then this method prints baby and the baby's name is sleeping, since it's only been an hour since the baby was fed, and so the baby's happy and is sleeping. On the other hand, if this is the second time this method has been called since the baby was created or last fed, that is, if 2 hours have now passed since the baby was created or last fed, then this method prints baby and then the baby's name is awake, time for food. The final case is as if this is the third or more time that this method has been called since the baby was created or last fed, that is, if it has been 3 or more hours since the baby was created or last fed, then this method prints baby and then the baby's name is crying uncontrollably, feed the baby, because it's been 3 hours since the baby's been fed. To further clarify hourPasses, let's look at the test functions below. If you haven't already done so, mark to do 3 as done, and scroll down to do 4, about line 94. There are 2 test functions below, runTest1 and runTest2. Both are called from main, although those calls are currently commented out. For each test function, its docstring shows what should get printed when the test function runs. So what we'll do for each of the 2 test functions is we'll read the code in the function, predicting what that code will cause to be printed. And then we'll confirm that our prediction matches the correct output that is written in the docstring of the function. By doing so, that will help you clarify your understanding of the spec of the baby class so that you can then implement it. Scroll down until you see the code of Run Test 1. It begins at about line 136. I'm going to arrange it so that on this video, it shows the relevant parts of the three methods, each surrounded in blue, and the code against the left edge, and the expected output from that code in green. The first two lines of the code print a blank line and then a bunch of dashes followed by running test number 1. The third line constructs a baby whose name is Joshua and assigns the name B to that baby. As you know, when you construct an object, the __init___ method of that object's class runs. So here, the baby's init method runs, as the code there shows, at prints hello baby, and then your baby's name, and then an exclamation mark. And indeed, that's what appears next to the output, hello baby Joshua exclamation mark. The next line of code is b.hourPasses, where B is that baby that was just constructed, whose name is Joshua. So the hourPasses method runs on this object B. Since this is the first time that method has been called since the baby was created or last fed, it prints that first message, baby, and then here Joshua is sleeping. And indeed, that's what we see in that green output. After that, the method hourPasses runs again on that object B 3 more times. On the first of those 3 times, that is the second hourPasses, the hourPasses method prints the message that it's supposed to print when it's the second time since this baby was created or last fed, namely, baby, in this case Joshua, is awake, time for food. When the next b.hourPasses runs, the hourPasses method runs the message for when it's the third or more time since this baby was created or last fed, so it prints baby Joshua is crying uncontrollably, feed the baby. On the last of those 4 hourPasses, it does that again, since it's been 3 or more times since the baby was fed or created. The code continues with the print statement that prints a blank line, and then b.feedBaby. That causes the feedBaby method to run on the object B, which, as we can see in the specification down there, causes thank you for feeding baby Joshua to get printed. The next line of code then runs b.hourPasses. Pay close attention since something different will be happening now. When this call to hourPasses happens, it's the 5th call, but it's the first since the baby was last fed. So what gets printed is baby Joshua is sleeping. To repeat, this is the 5th time that hourPasses has been called on the object B, but it's the first time since the feedBaby method was called, since the baby was fed. Therefore, hourPasses chooses the first of its 3 messages, namely, baby Joshua is sleeping. If that's not clear to you, go back and play the last minute or so and make sure that you see why hourPasses prints the first message immediately after a feedBaby. The code then continues to the next b.hourPasses. It's now been 2 times since feedBaby was called, so it prints the second of the 3 messages that hourPasses chooses from. Namely, baby Joshua is awake, time for food. The code continues with another print, printing a blank line, and then another call to b.feedBaby, which causes thank you for feeding baby Joshua to get printed. Then we see yet another b.hourPasses. Since this is the first time that hourPasses was called since the baby was last fed, it prints that first message, baby Joshua is sleeping. Now the code continues to that last chunk of 5 lines. First a print that prints a blank line, then a b.feedBaby that causes thank you for feeding baby Joshua to get printed, then 3 calls to hourPasses, still on that same object B. That causes the first of the 3 messages, then the second of the 3 messages, then the third of the 3 messages to be printed one after the other. That's the end of Run Test 1. Hopefully you now understand the specifications of the 3 methods, init, feedBaby, and hourPasses. If not, replay the portion of this video that just ran you through Run Test 1, and then resume the video from this point. We'll now walk quickly through Run Test 2 just to make sure that everything is clear to you. Feel free to ignore the rest of the video if you don't feel a need to walk through Test 2 yourself. The video shows the code on the left, and then the output on the right, broken into 2 parts. At this point, trace the code by hand yourself, As you do so, confirm that what you predict will get printed is in fact what's shown to the right as the correct thing to get printed. If you get all the way through the trace and your prediction for what gets printed matches that what's shown on the right, then stop this video, you're done. But if at any point your prediction for what gets printed doesn't match that which is shown to the right, and you don't see why the two are not the same, then resume the video from this point where I will walk through the code for you. Again, pause the video now and trace the code by hand. The code for run test 2 starts by printing a blank line and then running test number 2. It then constructs two babies with names McKinley and Keegan respectively, and names those objects McKinley and Keegan as well. Constructing those two babies makes the underscore underscore init underscore underscore method run in both cases, and that method prints hello baby McKinley and then hello baby Keegan. The code then enters a loop that runs 3 times. The first time through the loop, it prints a blank line and then iteration number 1. The format method replaces the squiggly brackets with the format's argument, which is 0 plus 1, that is 1. That's why it prints iteration number 1 this time through the loop. The code then continues by calling our passes on the Keegan object. Since this is the first time that our passes has been called on that object since the object was constructed or the feedBaby method called on it, our passes prints the first of its 3 messages, namely, baby Keegan is sleeping. The code then continues with feedBaby called on the McKinley object. feedBaby method prints thank you for feeding baby McKinley. The code then enters another loop that calls our passes on the McKinley object 4 times. Note that the McKinley object has just had feedBaby called on it. Because of that, the first time through the loop that our passes is called on the McKinley object, it prints the first of the 3 messages that our passes can print. The next time, it prints the second of those messages, then the next 2 times, the third of the 3 messages that our passes can print. After the J loop finishes its 4 times, the code calls feedBaby, then our passes twice, all on the McKinley object, producing the last 3 lines of the first segment of what's shown as being printed. The code then enters the second time through the K loop. It prints a blank line and iteration number 2. Then our passes is called on the Keegan object. This is the second time that our passes has been called on Keegan since Keegan was constructed or fed. So it prints the second of the 3 messages that our passes can print. Baby Keegan is awake, time for food. The code then calls feedBaby on McKinley. feedBaby prints thank you for feeding baby McKinley. It also resets the clock for our passes with regard to McKinley. Note that it has no effect on Keegan. The code then re-enters the J loop. Because McKinley has just had feedBaby called on her, the our passes on McKinley causes the first and then the second and then the third message of our passes to be printed, and then that third message one more time. After the J loop concludes, feedBaby is called on McKinley, and then our passes is called on McKinley twice. The call to feedBaby reset the clock for McKinley, so the our passes on McKinley is back to the first and second messages. I'll leave the third iteration to you. You might pause the video now and confirm that what you predict gets printed does indeed get printed in iteration number 3. If you have not already done so, mark to do 4 as done, and then continue to do 5. For to do 5, you'll implement the entire baby class, starting with class baby. After you've implemented the entire baby class, uncomment one by one the calls in main to the 2 tests, and confirm that what gets printed is exactly what's in the doc strings of those 2 run test functions. Of course, ask questions as needed while you're implementing this class. But before you begin implementing, make sure that you understand the specification for those 3 methods. You can't possibly write the code without understanding the specs. Have fun!